We all have our own unique story about a piece of gear that got away. It's a story as old as mom and pop shops, and these stories are usually filled with anger, sadness, regret, and all those kinds of things. Today we are going to talk about this 2007 Fender Jaguar that's crafted in Japan and has stock humbucker pickups. So you may or may not be wondering, Cole, you were just playing this guitar in the intro song, and you said that it's the one that got away. How can that be? Well, I said it's the one that kinda got away because my friend Nick bought the guitar, so I still have access to it occasionally. But I want to dive in and tell you the whole story of this guitar. Why didn't I buy it? Why I regret not buying it? And do I still regret not buying it? This is not a demo video or a playthrough video, and there won't be many technical specs about this guitar. This video is more so just a story about one that got away, kind of. And I hope you enjoy. This guitar has been in my orbit for a really long time. Nick bought this guitar from Neil, our friend and bassist for our band Daryl Saves Lives. From what I recall, Neil owned this guitar for a few years, but decided to sell it because he didn't like the scale length of it, as it's shorter than say a Strat or a Jazzmaster. When Neil told us he was selling this guitar, Nick immediately offered to buy it. Me on the other hand, I didn't really care for it. See, I wasn't crazy about this guitar at all. I had seen it at Neil's for years, but I never really was attracted to it. I didn't think it was visually that appealing, and I never really plugged it in and got to experience how it sounded or played. I just saw it and moved on. When Neil asked me initially if I wanted to buy this guitar, I turned him down. I wasn't drawn to the guitar and I didn't really care for it, and I felt no regret at all at the time, but that changed in a year. I was going through a really weird guitar conundrum. From 2017 to 2020, I bought a bunch of guitars, but I didn't really care for them that much. I bought them because they were good prices and good deals, rather than stuff that I actually really wanted. This eventually resulted in the guys in Daryl Saves Lives having a gear intervention with me, which I really appreciate them for because it honestly helped me so much. After this intervention in late 2021, early 2022, I began selling off the majority of my guitar collection. My goal was to sell all these guitars to fund new guitars that I loved more and actually wanted to keep. At this time, I really wanted to get a guitar with humbuckers as I was interested in getting more into that sound. So Nick offered to lend me his Fender Jaguar, and I immediately took him up on it. Even though previously I wasn't crazy about this guitar, it was still exciting to have a new guitar in the room when I had just sold off the majority of my collection. I went over to Nick's, got the guitar, came home, plugged it in, and oh my god, I felt so much regret for not buying it the previous year. The neck felt great, it looked super sick, and the pickup sounded so good. I borrowed the guitar for a couple months until I bought my Balaguer, which I absolutely love. But even after I bought that Balaguer, that Jaguar was still the gold standard for humbuckers for me, and honestly my dream guitar. It's been roughly 2 years since Nick lent me the guitar, and since then I've built a guitar collection that I'm very proud of and I love so much. Except for my Jazzmaster, which I do not love. As weird as this sentence is to say, I feel that I'm in a really good place gear-wise, and I'm really happy with what I have. But that still hasn't stopped me from thinking about this guitar all the time. Since I still have such close proximity to this guitar, I thought it'd be cool to do an experiment. I asked Nick if I could borrow the guitar for 2 weeks to see if I still liked it as much as I used to, and if I had the same feeling of regret as I had before. He was game for the idea, so I headed over and picked up the guitar. From the moment I picked up this guitar from Nick's, I was super excited. Seeing the guitar on my guitar rack almost made me giddy with excitement. When I held it and played it unplugged, it was absolutely amazing. The guitar was exactly how I remembered it, but then I plugged it in, and the mojo was gone. I was honestly super shocked. This guitar had been the gold standard for me for humbucker pickups, but it sounded so thin and lifeless. I tried getting a good sound out of it, and though I could, it didn't sound like a humbucker, it sounded like a single coil. I had read before that some people didn't like the pickups in this, and I figured that my ears had just changed and I didn't like them either. This really bothered me for a couple days. I didn't know how I could love a guitar so much and love the sound of it so much, and then all of a sudden just not really care for it. But then when I was looking at the guitar, I realized something. I had it set to coil split mode. Once I took the guitar out of coil split mode, it sounded amazing. It sounded exactly how I remembered it, and I was super happy. And honestly, the coil split mode sounds good as well, but when you're expecting a humbucker sound and it sounds super thin and coil splitty, it wasn't the sound I was hoping for. From that moment on, I enjoyed the guitar so much more. It was everything that I remembered and more. As the 2 weeks came to a close, I found myself loving the guitar just as much as I used to, but I also felt the same feeling of regret that I had before for not buying it. So I decided I wanted to dig into that feeling a little bit more. Throughout my life, I've had the philosophy that everything happens for a reason in all aspects of life. But this guitar was a major caveat to that. I really thought about this a lot when I had this guitar recently. I knew I had to look at this guitar and my feeling of regret and everything happening for a reason completely differently. First of all, I had to acknowledge something. I know that Nick absolutely loves this guitar, so it's kind of weird for me to think that I wish I had this guitar and not him. Cause in a really weird way, that's me wishing that I had something that made him happy and he doesn't get to have that thing that makes him happy. When I phrase it like that, it sounds kind of messed up, right? Then I kept thinking more about my original choice not to get this guitar. If I did get this guitar, I don't know if I would have gotten my Balaguer or my vintage Japanese Fender. And if I didn't get those guitars, I don't know if I would have written certain songs, which is a wild rabbit hole to go down. The more and more I kept reframing my feeling of regret, the more happy I felt about not owning the guitar. When I gave this guitar back to Nick, I wasn't upset at all, and honestly, I was happy. I was happy that my good friend was getting one of his favorite guitars back. I was happy that I had a really awesome friend who would lend me a guitar that I really loved. And I was really happy that I got to enjoy this guitar for 2 weeks. From the moment his door shut and I started walking home, I felt peace and I was super happy. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this is one of my dream guitars. So if one came on the market, would I buy it? Well, it's a little bit complicated. The reason I say it's complicated is because of price. When Neil bought this guitar in 2017, he paid $500 for it. And when Nick bought this guitar from Neil in 2021, he paid $800 for it, which were both really great deals at the time for this guitar. Since then though, these guitars have absolutely skyrocketed in price. There's actually one of these guitars for sale right now in my province that's going for 4 times as much as what Neil paid and 3 times as much as what Nick paid. And no shade at all to the person selling that guitar. These guitars have gone up in value because they are somewhat rare, so that is actually a fairly fair price for these guitars. But getting back to me owning this guitar, I just can't get myself to spend that kind of money on this guitar knowing what my friends paid for it. Maybe it's jealousy, maybe it's me just being cheap. Even though I know I love this guitar, I just can't do it. I don't know. I feel like for that money, I'd rather create my own journey with a different guitar rather than going for this guitar. But if I did see this guitar going for 500 to even like 1200 Canadian, I would definitely strongly consider it because it really is an amazing guitar that I love so much. But that's my story of a guitar that got away, kind of. But as always, I want to hear from you now. What's a piece of gear that got away from you that you regret not buying? Or is there a piece of gear that got away that you did get to try again and felt peace? Let me know in the comments down below as I'd love to hear what you have to say. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking it and subscribing to the channel. My goal is to hit 1,000 subscribers by the end of this year, and I really think we can do it together. Anyways, I'm Kolji, and I'll see you in the next one.